Hi, this is Anupinder from Superbits Academy. In last video, we have discussed about the CloudSim events. We learned about how these events are structured and what kind of data they carry in between the entities. Now, this video is more about understanding the flow of the simulation. Once you start the simulation and what different set of codes or what different set of methods are called during that simulation process, we will be learning about those things. But before I go into the Eclipse and show you that how this whole scenario works, I just wanted to discuss few things here. Like we have uh, 4 or 5 main classes which are involved in this. Among these 4 classes, the CloudSim class, that is CloudSim.java class, is one of the most important. It contains all the basic and the important functions which are to be called during the simulation process. Now this CloudSim act as an intermediate between all the other different class calls. That those classes can be sim entity class, those classes can be sim event class, those classes include future queue, deferred queue, data center, data center broker, and other entity classes which are extending the sim entity class, right? So these are the following main classes which we are going to come across during the simulation process, and there are various methods which are called number of times. The general scenario which happens in during the simulation is there are two phase process of scheduling the event in simulation. Once you start your simulation using the start simulation method of CloudSim class, right? So this particular simulation, when started, it works in 2 phases. In phase 1, the uh, events are generated, and these events once generated are added to future queue, right? The second phase is where the events which are added to the future queue are moved to deferred queue. Now the events which you add to future queue are the same, are no differ from the what you move to deferred queue. The basic requirement of these two types of queues is like we are talking about dynamic environment, right? Now when we talk about dynamic environment, we always say that we create new components in runtime, right? So to maintain the list of new components which are generated during the runtime, we require future queue, right? So whatever things are added in runtime, they are added to future queue first, and once all the set of new components are added to future queue, then they are one by one moved to deferred queue, right? Now deferred queue is the one which are which is basically kept as or used as a ready queue in this particular system. So all the events which are available in deferred queue will be processed in actual, right? Whereas future queue is something which can be you can name it as the waiting queue. From this waiting queue, events are moved to the deferred queue, and whatever the sequence is provided in the deferred queue, as per that particular sequence, the events will be processed. So these two queues are required so that dynamism is allowed in CloudSim. As if we compare it to the grid sim, where dynamism is not allowed, we cannot add entities to that simulation behavior, whereas CloudSim allows this. So that's why we require these two queues, that is future queue and deferred queue. So this is the only reason we have these two things. So this is the basic funda why we require this, and let's move to our particular code. Now in this particular Eclipse, we have one very good feature named as a debug option, right? Now this is what I'm going to use in learning about the process of the simulation and the flow of the simulation. So as CloudSim example one is the simplest one, so it will be easier for us to understand the simulation process using this example. So this example has also been discussed previously, so if you want to know more about it, you must watch my previous videos. I will be starting from this place. This is cloudsim.start simulation method. Now this is the first call, which actually allows you to start the simulation of the CloudSim simulation framework. So what I did here is I already added a toggle breakpoint here. So whenever I start debugging, my particular debug will start from this particular location. So let's do it. So it is asking me to open the debug perspective. I have no issues with that. So my execution is stopped at this particular place. Now there are two options which I will be using. One is the step into, one is the step over. Step into I will be using when I want to go inside the method call, whereas step over is like when I don't want to get inside the method, but I want to execute that method only, right, and move on to the next part. So here I'm going to step into. Now when I go step into that particular place, so you must have observed that now we are moved to cloudsim.java class, and this says the start simulation method is there. So this particular method further sends a call to a few more methods. That is, one is the run, and once the run method is called, it further gives send call to some other methods within this run method call, right? So let's go inside that. So if you see here, starting CloudSim version 3.0. Now I want to step into the run method. So once I go in the run method, we check here that does this CloudSim simulation is running or not. Here it says false, so we are going to start all the other entities. Now we are in the run start, and we are changing the status of running flag equals to true. Now here if you see entities, we have already created these entities when we call cloudsim.init function. So here if you see, we have four different elements inside this entities array list. So first one is the CloudSim shutdown. It is associated with the 0 ID. So this 0 ID is basically a unique identification number for this particular entity. Similarly, one is unique identification number for cloud information service. Then for data center it is 2, and then for data center broker it is 3. So wherever we are using these entities, or like assigning these entities as source or destination in events, we will be using the IDs instead of their names, right? So this particular set of code will actually call the start entity method of each entity which is provided in this particular entity array list, right? So let's go and see which is the first entity. This is the CloudSim shutdown entity, so we are going to call the start entity method. Now why the start entity method is here? Because this particular CloudSim shutdown class is extending the sim entity class, right? So it will be implementing three main methods. One is the process event, one is the shutdown entity, and one is the start entity method. These three methods are abstract methods of the sim entity which are supposed to be implemented in the extending classes. So the CloudSim shutdown has extended the sim entity class. So they have implemented these three methods into this, right? So let's go and call the other entity. Now second entity is the cloud information service. Again, if you go inside there, the start in entity method is called from the cloud information service.java class. So again, this class is extending the same entity. So that means there must be implementation of process event as well as the shutdown entity event. So this is the one process event, and this is the method that is shutdown entity method, right? So we have that. So next is the data center. Now if you go inside the data center, you will see there is some code written over there because we are supposed to register our data center with CIS, right? So for your purpose, I show you my log. Till now we have not scheduled any event, so let's go and see how this event is scheduled. So this will print that data center is starting. Next is we are trying to fetch the CIS ID, that is 1. So if you remember that uh, in entities array list, we have 4 different things, that is CloudSim shutdown. It has 0 ID. 1 is for cloud information service, 2 is for data center, and 3 is for data center broker, right? So if you see here that we have GIS ID equals to 1, so that means we have fetched the entity ID of the cloud information service, right? Now next important method which you need to take care about is the send now. Now the send now method is the one which is defined in the same entity class, and this particular send now will actually send further calls to send method of the same entity and then to the schedule method. So let's get into the details. Now 3 parameters are passed. One is the cloud information service ID, one is the ID of the current entity, that is the data center. It will be 2, right? And we are sending the tag. If you are aware about what we have discussed in last video about these tags, that each tag will have some certain kind of instruction set associated with them to perform. So we will see that how this is performed. So first let's get into the details of this send now method. So we are here, we got the ID of the data center, that is 2. So we are going inside the send method. Now this send method is inside in the sim entity. So what we have passed is the 3 elements. One is entity ID, one is the object, and CloudSim. If you are aware about the structure of the event, each event will have at least 5 things to to store. One is the source entity ID, one is the destination entity ID, one is the tag of the event, tag type, event type, and time at which it will be called. So this is who is scheduling, who will be processing, what type of processing, and what type of event it is. It can be null, it can be create, it can be send, or it can be hold, right? So this is just to ensure that what kind of event we are doing. So most of the time you will see send. Create you will only see in the case where you are adding new dynamic entities, whereas hold is to pausing the simulation process, whereas time is when to start, right? This is what we have for the event structure. So if I come back to this place, you will see that we are trying to making those 5 points. Now one thing I forgot to mention here, that data can also be passed, which is optional. So if in this case you see, what we have is, we have entity, we have tag, and we have data as an object, right? So that means in this case we are passing data. So again a send method call is done, and if you see the signature of this particular method, it says entity id. Entity id is the id of the destination, whereas next is the delay, how long from the current simulation time the event should be sent, right? Next is CloudSim tag. It defines a user defined number representing the type of the event message, and data is the reference to the data which is to be sent for the event, right? So let's get into the details of the send method. Here we do certain checks, right? Here we check entity id must not be less than 0, because if no destination is there, that event won't be processed. Okay, next is we check the time, and then we get the source id. So now we have all the 4 things here, and we calculate the delay in case we are working on network, and then this in turn calls the schedule method of the same entity class. Now when you get into the schedule, if you see, we send call to the send method of the CloudSim class. So we have entity, we have destination ID, entity id, we have delay, we have tag, and we have data. So if you see here, we have source id as 2, destination id as 1, tag type, if you see, you will see the number tag type as 2. Now if you want to see that what tag type it is, you need to go and check in your CloudSim tag class. So for that I need to change my perspective. I go in CloudSim dot tag CloudSim tag.java class, and that is available in this core CloudSim tag. So if you see, base is given value 0, and let's see what is there. So if I add 0 to 2, I have register resource tag. So that means this particular tag will be called, right? So this is what we have. Then data we have as 2, right? So that means tag provided here is 2, and the event type must be 2 again. I will tell you how. Then time is already provided, that is 0, and data is provided here is 2. So we have all the structured ready to go. So let's get into the details of this. Now this is the send method of CloudSim class, and we are checking that if delay is less than 0, that means send delay cannot be negative, right? So we will throw an exception. Next is we are generating an event. Now here if you see sim event.send, so if you see if you check the constructor of the sim event class, it asks you about 5 elements: event type, time, source, destination, tag, and object. So we have passed all these 5 elements in the previous call, and this ev type is added here, that is the sim event.send. So once we are done with the event, you will see that an instance is added here for the event, and it has all the details which I have discussed about the structure. So if you see entity destination, entity source, entity event type, then event tag, and the time, right? And the end waiting time, which is always set to 0. So if you see data is 2 here. So let's move forward. Now here if you see that future dot add event e. So that means we are adding the event to the future queue instance. So if you see, it is a instance of future queue, so we are adding the event. So if I go inside this, you will see that add event method is called in the future queue class, and we are adding one to the serial number, and then we add the event to the future queue, right? So this is how you schedule. So if you come and see in log, now the event has been added. This event is with the source is data center, destination is cloud information service, time is 0, data is 2, and waiting time is 0, and event tag is register resource, right? And event type is send. So in this way your events are added to the future queue, right? Now there is one more event is to be added here, that is the resource characteristics request, and that will be done between the broker and broker only, right? So we will see how it is done. So next I uh, come to this place again, and let's continue with the execution. So once your function calls are over, you will be back to the CloudSim class where you have started, that is start entity method. So this is the first thing that we are always doing whenever we start the simulation. So let's go more in detail, and this time we are running this start entity method of the data center broker class, right? Now here you will see an interesting thing. Here in the start entity method you again schedule one more event, right? So this is done. Now here in schedule you go there, you get the current ID, that is 3. Okay, this 3 is actually resembling your data center as 3. This 3 is resembling the data center broker, right? So next we go into the schedule. The schedule is again sending the destination ID, delay, tag, and data is null. So from here we are going in the calling of send method of CloudSim. So we get inside that, we again check the delay must not be less than 0, then we create an event and we add that event to the future queue, right? So this is how the events are added to the future queue. So if you see here, you will see that event is generated with the following details, and these details are data is null and waiting time is 00, destination entity destination is 3 and entity source is 3. So that means both source and destination both are the data center broker. Then e type is send, and tag is 15. Now if you go and see in CloudSim tag.java, this 15 resembles resource characteristics request that you have scheduled in your CloudSim class. So this is how your events are added to the future queue first. Now we are not stopped here. This is only the completion of phase 1. We will be moving on to one more thing, which is called as run clock tech method, right? So the start entity is over, and we are going back to the run method again. Here infinite while loop is used. Right now this infinite while loop will work till the time we are adding we are having anything in the future queue. Once we are done with everything of the processing and we are not scheduling any new event, then this while loop will be exited, right? So we are done with starting our entities, and now if you see in our log, you will see that there are 2 events which are scheduled. One event is for the register resource and one event is for the characteristics resource. Now till this point of time we have this event present in future queue, and there is nothing which has been moved to the deferred queue. Now the process starts of about first checking out any of the events which are available in the deferred queue and processing them. If nothing is there, then we go and find if anything is available in future queue, and then we process. Now if I want to explain you about this run clock tick method, for a very brief thing, I can only say that this clock tick method is responsible for doing everything in this simulation process, because this is the only event, this is the only method which actually sends a call for processing the events in the deferred queue, and sends a call for moving the events from future queue to the deferred queue, right? So let's go in detail of this. So once you open this this particular uh, run clock tick method, you will see that this set of code is again you know calling the run method for each entity available in the entities array list. That means for each entity we will be running this set of code, right? That is entity run. Whereas once this is over, we are checking the size of the future queue, and then we are calling the process event method of the CloudSim class to further move the elements of the future queue to the deferred queue. So we are going to see in detail that how it is done. So here, if you see, if you execute, you see that size of the entities are 4. Now this for loop will go through uh, the checks that is that entity is running, which is going to be processed. So here you check if the state is runnable, only then you will call the entity method, that is entity run method, right? So let's go and see what exactly happens in this entity run method. So once you go in entity run method, this method is in sim entity class, and here you see is there any next event available for that particular entity. If any event is available, you are going to process that event by passing that event to the process event method of the sim entity class. So let's go and see what exactly is done in this next event. Here in next event, now here if you see in get next event method, we are sending one more parameter which says cloudsim.sim any. Now this is basically a predicate which will always return a true. So if you haven't seen my previous video, please go and watch that. There I already explained about these predicate events, and that's the first video only. So from this get next event, I go and send a call to one more method, that is the num event waiting. So here we check that is there any event which is still waiting in deferred queue. If it is, then we need to process them, right? So we go and check in deferred queue, and we see is there anything available. So that can be processed by using the waiting method of the CloudSim class. So here we check, because nothing is available, it returned null, right? So because this entity which we have called is basically the CloudSim shutdown, so no event was scheduled during that. So if you see here in log, we have two destinations, that is cloud information service and the broker, who are going to have the events, but right now nothing is there in deferred queue, so we are not going to see anything as in process event method of the same entity. So next, if I go here and again run this method, so I'm just passing on, we will see it in the next phase. Now here we are at the future phase. Now you check what is the size of future. The size of future provided here is the 2. So that means we will be moving 2 items from the future queue to the deferred queue. So here what you do is you start an iterator, and from this iterator we choose every event one by one and move it to deferred queue through this process event method. So let's see how it is done. So once we are on process event and we have passed the first event, that if you see and destination is 1 and source is 2, event type is send and tag is 2. So I'm sure you must have identified this event, right? So from here we are going to process the event. So here we try to perform some checks, where we see that if as the event time is less than clock. If it is, then that means it is the past event. So we move to the next part. We fast the current clock, and then we see that what kind of event type it is. So if you see here, we see we get the event type of the event, right? So on the basis of that, we found that it is a send event, and then we process it. We fetch the destination, right? And then we check if the destination is less than 0. If not, we go and get the tag, right? So here if you see, the tag type must be 2, right? So we got 2 here. So destination entity on which it is to be performed is the cloud information service, right? And then we try to see that is the state of this particular entity is waiting. If yes, we are not going to process anything. We just go and add the wait predicate to about this event, right? So because this entity is in running state, so we are not going to perform this set of code. We will be directly referring to this particular instruction. So we add the event to the deferred queue instance, right? So this is basically an instance of deferred queue class. So we have added the event, and we are sending back the call to the run clock tick method, right? So we are back in run clock tick method, and we are going to remove the previous event from the future queue. So in this way, we have reduced one event from the future queue. Now if you see, the size of this future queue will be only 1, right? Because we have removed the event from this future queue and added the event to the deferred queue. So here again, we try to check that is there any more events available in future queue. If yes, then we do the same thing again, and we process the event, right? So once we go in the process, we try and check. We again check here what type of event is that. It will be send again. Then we will check the destination and all. Then we will check the waiting state of the destination. If it is not waiting, we add the queue to the deferred queue. So this is how it is done, right? So this is here. Now if you see, the deferred queue has a size of 2, right? Whereas once we remove the item from the future queue, its size will be, you see, is 0, right? So this is how you move the events from future queue to deferred queue. So next time when we run this clock tick method and executing these set of instructions, we will be processing the deferred queue events. Let's see that how it is done. So let's complete the run clock tick call, and then we again go for the another iteration of this while loop. We go and call the run clock tick method. We fetch the size, and we check is the entity is runnable. Now when we call the run method for this entity is the shutdown CloudSim shutdown entity. We haven't scheduled any event for this, so nothing will happen. The event will be returned as null. So we go in next event, we call the next get next event method, and then we go in event num event waiting. Then we go in waiting method of CloudSim, and it returns 0, and we return the null from this particular method back. So because no event was scheduled for CloudSim and CloudSim shutdown entity, there's nothing happened here. Now once we go and check for the another entity, now this entity is cloud information service entity. Now if you see in log, we have already scheduled one event for cloud information service entity, and this event is register resource. Now you will see that how this whole thing is processed. So we are going to run the method. Now here the get next event will call the get next event with the predicate. Then we are going to call the num event waiting. Now the ID of the entity, that is 1. So cloud information service is passed along with the predicate. You go and call the waiting event, and here you will see that we are getting one. We are creating an iterator of deferred queue, right? And we are checking, is there anything available in the deferred queue? If yes, we fetch that into the event. Now if you see, the event fetched here is the entity destination is 1, entity source is 2, entity type is 1, and tag type is 2. So this is fast. Now we try to match the destination with what we have passed in this particular method. Now this entity destination is 1, so that means we have a match here, right? And once we have a match here, we increase the count of this particular variable. Now this count is increased. Now again we have one more event available here. We fetch that event and we try to compare the destination ID which we have passed in this particular method with the destination ID of the event. So if we go and see, the destination ID is changed here, that is 3. So that this resembles the data center broker. So it doesn't match here. So we will be going to the next iteration. But because there are only 2 events available in deferred queue, so this while will be now exited, right? So the count will be returned. Now count is 1. Now this, when we come and get a value of this num event waiting method, that will return 1, and 1 is always greater than 0. So we are going to select the event now. So this select event method will further send a call to the select method of the sim event with the ID and the predicate, right? So we are going to call this select method. Here you will see again that we are referring to deferred iterator, and this deferred iterator again check whether the event which we are trying to select has the same source what we are looking for. So here is 1, and if you compare this with 1, that means a match, and similarly predicate is also matched, and we remove the event from the iterator, that means the deferred queue. So if you see, size we have is 2. Now after executing this particular iterator, you will see that the size has been reduced to 1. Now the event is already there in a cache which was removed from the deferred queue, which will be sent back to the calling method. So we are sending this cached event to the method here, and we return the event to the sim event method call in this run method, right? So now if you see, we will be having the same event, that is destination ID equals to 1, and entity source ID is 2, e type is 1, and tag is 2, right? So in this way we fetch the events related to one entity, and that is only by using the run method of the sim entity class during the run clock tech call of CloudSim class, right? So now once we fetch the event, we need to process that particular event. So this process event of that particular entity will be called. So that means this process event method whose implementation is provided in cloud information service class will be called. Now as we know that we have an event tag which is referring to register resource CloudSim tag, so that means this particular case will be called in this process event method, right? So we are going to fetch the event tag. So tag is 2. So this 2 resembles the register resource method, and we are going to run this particular instruction, right? So here we add the ID, that is the data which is passed to the event. We add the ID of the data center to this particular res list. So that means we have registered our resource in cloud information service instance. So in this way our entity has been added to our entity ID of data center has been added to resource list, and that means registration process for this is over. So next we will see, is there any other event available? for this particular entity? If yes, we are going to run this while loop, otherwise we will be exiting this. So there is only one event which is available corresponding to cloud information service, so we will be exiting the loop here, right? So if you see event here is null, so we are going to return, and our call goes back to again run clock tick method, and we will be running this for loop and another iteration for next entity. Now if you see, the next entity is the data center entity. Now we doesn't have any event for this, so nothing will be processed in this particular case. So if you go and check any event is available, because no event is available correspondingly matching to the data center entity ID, so it won't give you the count greater than 0. So if you see, the count which is returning here is 0, so that means the count is 0, therefore no event available, and the event will be null here, right? So event will be null here, that means this while loop will not be executed, and we return back to the run clock tick call, and we process the run method for another entity, that is the data center broker. Now here we have one event left for this, so this is the one event which is to be processed here. So resource characteristics request. So if you see here, we will get at least one event here. We call the get next event, and we are going to call the next event waiting. Then we are checking into the waiting method of CloudSim. Then because deferred queue has one item left to be processed, now this will be matched with the ID of the data center broker, which is 3. So if the event ID if the destination entity ID of the event is equal to the ID of the data center broker, then this count will be increased. So if you see here, the entity destination ID is 3, and the D contains 3 here, so this is matched. So predicate is also matched, and we will be increasing the count by 1. So if you see, count will be increased by 1. So that means there is one event which is to be processed for data center broker class event, right? So then we are going to select. So in this selection, basically what we are doing is we are we are fetching the event from the deferred queue and removing it from the deferred queue, so that this event can be processed and must not be called again. So here if you see, deferred queue has a size 1, and we fetch the last event which is available. Then we try to match the destination with the source. Then that means this is matched, and we are going to remove. So we have already cached the event here. So if you see the event details, destination ID is 3, source ID is 3, entity type is 1, tag is 15, right? So we call this, and we return the event to the process event method of sim entity. Now here you process it. So because event is not equals to null, you send a call to process event method. Now this process event method tries to fetch the call. Now this, if you see carefully, we are in data center broker class, so that means we are going to process event for the data center broker class, because we were executing the run method for data center broker only, and the event is also associated with the data center broker instance. So here we require resource characteristics request, so we will be processing this particular tag here, right? So this particular tag is further going to call this particular method, that is process resource characteristics request, and this particular method call contain one more event to be scheduled. So if you go inside this and try to see, for each data center we will be scheduling one more event. So again, if you see here, send now, so the send now will add, the send now in turn will add an event to the future queue, right? So if we go and get inside this particular method, we are sending the entity CloudSim tag and data. Then we are checking the entity is not less than ID. This is the same thing which we have done, which we have learned about couple of minutes back. So this is how you actually schedule events in between, right? So you now, if you see, you are going to add the event to the future queue. Now this event, if you see, is going to be added with the destination ID as 2, that means data center, source ID as 3, that is data center broker, and tag is 6. So if I go further and execute this, future queue will be added with one new event, and this is done, right? So this is how you actually add the new events in between. So we are back to the call of the run method of sim entity class, and we are going to find another event if any available in deferred queue, but now deferred queue is empty. So this particular get next event will send us null as event. So we will be exiting this while loop and we will be back to the run clock tick method. So this is how the run entity is done. Now if you see, we have recently added a new event to the future array list, future key array list. So that is resource characteristics and sources broker, and the destination is data center 0, right? So in this way we have scheduled one new event. So because we have a new event available in future queue, we will be moving it to the deferred queue by processing it. So the same thing happens again as we have already seen a few minutes back. So we are going to fetch the iterator from the future, and if you see, the size of future queue is 1. And if you want to see that what exactly is there in this array list, you can see in here is that new sim event is there, where entity destination is 2, entity source is 3, and tag is 6. So this event has been fetched and will be processed now. So once we go in process, we will check the event time. Event type is send. We try to see is about the destination entity, is it in waiting state or not. If it is not, add the event into the deferred queue, right? So in this way events are added to deferred queue, and you are back to the run clock tick method, the second phase of run clock tick method, and then you are going to again see if there is any more event available in future queue. There is no event, so we are going to skip this while loop, and every event from the future will be removed and done. So in this way, within the second iteration, we have scheduled another event, and we have already processed two previous scheduled events. So here again I check another thing: terminate, add, pause, add. These are some additional checks which are given here. These two set of instructions will be called when we are pausing our simulation, and this is when we explicitly say that terminate at that particular time. So these two events are called then. We will be talking about these things in detail in later videos, but right now my main emphasis was till this place only. So if you see, run clock tick method is finished. Now one iteration is again finished, and we will be processing it again. So in next iteration, whatever this event which we have scheduled in last iteration and we have added in the deferred queue will be processed. That means this event, resource characteristics event. So we go again and we run the entity method. Now this this entity run method will only be executed in thoroughly in the case of data center entity only, right? So if we go and see in detail, this is called. Now if you see event is null, so that means we are going out. So next call will be for the cloud information service. There is no event which is being scheduled for cloud information service. So again, event which is returned here will be null. So we will be again coming back to run clock tick method. Then again, when we execute it for the data center, now we have one event available for data center. Okay, I skipped that. So that was done. So in this way, we can go and execute it again and again and again and again and again. This will be executed till the time all the events which are available in future queue are moved to deferred, and deferred queue are processed, right? So this is how things work for us. And I am going to resume this debug now, and it will print our results. So I hope you must be able to understand that how this whole scenario work. So for a review, I start from this CloudSim event, CloudSim example1.java. We start with start simulation method. We go in its declaration, and there we call run method. Then in run method, if this simulation is yet to be started, then all entities sim start entity method as is to be called, and that will be called by the run start method, right? So we start all the entities, okay, and once all the entities are started, we will be sending a call to the run clock tick method. Now this run clock tick will be called infinitely till the time we reached at the point where no further event is to be processed or is available in deferred queue or future queue, right? So if we go inside the run clock tick method, we will see that there are two phases. One is we call the run method of each entity. Now this run method will be responsible for executing all the events which are available in deferred queue, and the second phase is responsible for moving any of the event which has been scheduled during calling of this run method from future queue to the deferred queue. So this is how this simulation process is called. So you schedule your events for future queue, and this future queue is processed and actually move the events from future to the deferred queue for further processing in the next phase, right? So this is how exactly the cloud simulation process works. So, and this is the only key to the simulation and to the understanding of this cloud simulation process. If you understood this particular scenario, then it will not be difficult for you to implement anything in this particular cloud simulation environment. So you will be actually able to track down that what event is to be scheduled when, how it is to be scheduled, and in what way it will be scheduled. So this is what I had for you in this video. I hope you understood what I tried to explain here. If you feel any of the confusions about this video, please share your views, and I definitely try to answer your questions, and I will try to remove your confusions and all. In case if you want to share your views, you can send an email on hello@superbits.com, or you can share it on either my Facebook page, that is Superbits Academy, or you can share your views on CloudSim Google group. So thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.